1. The receptionist informed me that my wife Darlene had departed earlier with Mr. Ridge to the Clubhouse, a location where staff were not usually permitted. I immediately drove there without knowing how the situation would resolve itself. On a Friday afternoon, I chose to phone Darlene for a dinner date at our favorite eatery. Her cell phone remained unanswered. After an extended period, it diverted to voicemail. So I dialed the main office number on Federal Street. The receptionist responded. I provided my name and requested her to connect me with Darlene. "Mrs. Talbot is not present," the girl replied. She had left with Mr. Ridge for the Clubhouse. I momentarily stood still, digesting this information, then inquired again. Had she truly gone to the Saveniers' Clubhouse? The receptionist pondered before confirming it calmly. "Yes." I found it hard to believe. I was aware of what the Saveniers' Clubhouse entailed. 2. The receptionist advised me that my wife Darlene had already departed for the Clubhouse with Mr. Ridge, a location where regular staff never gained entry. Without a clue about how things would unfold, I promptly took my car and drove there on Friday afternoon. I felt compelled to call Darlene for an evening meal at our preferred restaurant. Her phone rang unanswered. After a while, it was redirected to voicemail. In desperation, I phoned the main number at their office on Federal Street. The receptionist responded. I disclosed my identity and asked her to transfer the call to Darlene. "Mrs. Talbot is absent for today," the girl said. She had left with Mr. Ridge for the Clubhouse. For a fleeting moment, I was stunned before inquiring once more. Had she actually gone to the Saveniers' Clubhouse? The receptionist thought carefully before answering calmly, "Yes." I found it challenging to accept this fact. I had prior knowledge of the Saveniers' Clubhouse. In Back Bay, their boss Garrett Stiles constructed a gated residential complex with guest cottages, a lounge, where he and his circle indulged in whiskey, cigars, billiards, swimming, excluding routine employees. My wife unexpectedly was there on a Friday afternoon with Garrett's personal assistant, perhaps for work. A barrage of queries assailed my mind. I sought a rational excuse, but one fact remained crystal clear: Clubhouse matters were never business-related. In the bedroom, I found car keys and spotted a vibrant plastic card on the floor. It was an access pass to that very Clubhouse at Savenier. It appeared to have slipped out of Darlene's purse during her morning rush for work. I stood there, pondering over it for a long while, puzzling how an HR manager could gain entry to such a restricted area. Garrett Stiles inspected each card personally, indicating that Darlene had penetrated his exclusive circle. I retrieved the number from the back of the card using my phone. Online search revealed the Clubhouse address at Savenier, a half-hour drive from our house. Filled with apprehension, I anticipated life-altering events. I parked my car opposite the main gate near the entrance and waited. At around 4 p.m., a black Range Rover approached the checkpoint. It belonged to Darlene's boss. Through the tinted glass, I discerned figures in the back seat. My heart raced as I gripped the steering wheel, waiting for a glimpse of my wife. The window lowered, and the driver handed a pass to the guard, before the car entered the property and halted near the main structure. I leaned in, my gaze fixed, as my heart thumped intensely, anticipating what lay before me. The door creaked open, revealing Garrett Stiles. 2 more men of similar age followed behind him. They chattered boisterously over some topic, their ease evident. Retrieving their luggage from the trunk, the trio headed towards the guest houses. I remained in my vehicle, vigilantly watching the gate. I was there for Darlene and Calvin Ridge's arrival. Minutes stretched into hours as more cars entered the property, but Darlene was absent among them. The unease morphed into puzzlement. Perhaps the receptionist had made a mistake. Maybe Darlene had arrived earlier and departed already. In the end, I decided to park my speculations and confront my wife instead. I waited for her that evening and queried her directly about her visit to the Savenier Clubhouse. Calvin scrutinized me intently before asking, "How did you learn about my whereabouts?" I was merely delivering documents from my superior. Upon advancing and displaying the card found in the bedroom, her expression altered swiftly. She seized it hastily, expressing annoyance. "Are you spying on me now? I dislike that." Desiring to avoid an argument, her explanation seemed plausible enough, and I assumed I had needlessly worried. I moved towards her, encircled her with my arms, and kissed her cheek. However, a single question persistently lingered in my mind. Why was Darlene tasked with delivering documents to Garrett Stiles? He had an assistant, Calvin Ridge, for such errands. Shouldn't that have been his responsibility? This doubt kept me restless until daybreak. I always rely on my instincts. Regrettably, it proved accurate once more in this case. It was a Saturday morning. Over breakfast, I proposed we visit the city, explore, and drop by our preferred downtown eatery. She firmly declined, explaining that her department was set for an audit on Monday, requiring immediate preparation of documents. Lately, she'd been putting in weekend hours at work, something I hadn't found noteworthy before. However, it now appeared suspicious to me. The instant her car turned the corner, I phoned their office. I wished to confirm that she had truly gone to work. The on-duty guard answered and stated the office was vacant, the building locked until Monday. It was then I realized. Marlene was deceiving me. I hopped in my car and raced to the clubhouse. Within a half hour, I arrived. I sat in my vehicle, parked across the road from the club's entrance. The atmosphere was peaceful, with passers-by barely glancing at me. Then I noticed my wife's car. It approached the gate, her pass handed over to the guard, and she drove inside. She chose a guest space, exited, and a man approached her. Straining my eyes through the windscreen, I tried to identify him. It was Calvin Ridge, the assistant of my superior. Fury surged within me. I was shocked by Garrett Stiles' actions, especially since his assistant was now arranging meetings with my wife for him. Quickly pulling out my phone, I captured a brief video of them exiting the parking lot together and moving further onto the property towards the guest cottages. I pondered what reaction Darlene would have when she saw this video, considering her likely excuse for me this time. However, I decided not to ask or listen to another falsehood. I was done with discussions at the kitchen table. My intention was to show up at her office on Monday morning and reveal their affair in Garrett's office itself. I started my car and drove home. On Monday, without a moment's pause, I entered Garrett Stiles' reception area. Calvin Ridge recognized me instantly. He rose from his desk and approached me, saying, "Mr. Stiles is occupied at the moment. If you have a query, it's necessary to arrange a meeting beforehand." I met his gaze directly. "I believe he'll be eager to speak with me." Calvin attempted to dissuade me, but the office door was already ajar and I entered. Garrett Stiles was seated behind his expansive desk, sorting through documents. Upon seeing me, his countenance soured and he grabbed the phone. Advancing across the room, I took my seat in front of him and said, "I am Wade Talbot. My spouse is Darlene Talbot." Garrett stiffened. "And I wish to understand what the two of you are doing at the Savani Clubhouse every Saturday." The room remained silent for a few moments. Garrett regarded me in bewilderment. He put down his pen and relaxed in his chair, then inquired about my meaning and the nature of the Saturdays I was referencing. I retrieved my phone, displayed the screen toward him, and played the video I'd recorded outside the clubhouse that Saturday afternoon. It was evidently Darlene entering Savani's private premises, a sight that left Talbot perplexed for quite some time. His bewilderment appeared sincere. Upon Garrett raising his gaze, he stated composedly, "I rarely welcome anyone during weekends. I usually spend them with my family at my countryside residence. The individual in your footage isn't me. It's my personal assistant, Calvin Ridge." Then his complexion flushed. The elderly man scowled, shifting his gaze between the phone and me. Anger was palpable in him. "However," he switched tone, "I have a query now. How did your spouse obtain an access card for Savani?" He paused. "I personally oversee every card issued for that property. I never granted one to your wife." In response, I displayed the picture of the card found at home. Garrett promptly contacted the clubhouse security desk and instructed the guard on duty to swiftly check the serial number in the database. Security contacted again, confirming the card belonged to Darlene Voss, which is my wife's maiden name. Over the past 2 months, her vehicle had entered the property 6 times. My assistant, Calvin Ridge, had booked a guest cottage for her each time at the property's remote edge. It was then that I pieced together the puzzle. What if my suspicions about my wife's lover, Garrett Stiles, were misplaced? Could it have been Calvin Ridge, my personal assistant? She left work with him on that day. It was he whom I saw her with at the clubhouse on Saturday, and he likely obtained the card for her. I informed Garrett of needing to settle a matter and proceeded to the reception area. Approaching Calvin, I said, "Conference room." "1 minute," in a tone leaving no room for debate. He attempted to maintain a professional demeanor, but was interrupted before he could speak by me. "Your employment at Garrett and Pike terminates immediately." This statement made Calvin seem uneasy, yet he followed obediently without uttering a word. Upon entering the conference room, I initiated playback of the video on my phone screen, causing him to fabricate absurd excuses, claiming misunderstanding and asserting it was merely a work meeting. However, his deception was evident to me, so I pressed for transparency. "Ridge, don't complicate matters more. You reserved that cottage through the company." If I reveal your expense reports and the charge statement from your corporate card to Mr. Stiles, you'll be in deep trouble. It won't just result in your termination. Instead, legal action will be taken against you. This revelation sent Ridge into a state of panic. He paled, pleading for leniency and making a single request. All right, please hold on. Calm down, I'll disclose everything to you. However, leave my superior out of this. I have outstanding debts and a mortgage. I can hardly afford another predicament at the moment. Once he revealed the truth, it became clear. For 6 months, he and Darlene had been secretly seeing each other. Initially, they would meet up in hotels, but later, Calvin provided Darlene with access to a clubhouse at the Savonier. This is where their meetings occurred, utilizing a guest cottage on the property. He pledged to terminate Darlene's access card immediately and sever all ties with her. Looking at him left me in disbelief. The man whom my wife had jeopardized her family and career for turned out to be a pitiful worm who abandoned her without a moment's hesitation. I stood up, exited the conference room without uttering a word, and made my way back to Garrett's office. I needed to conclude that discussion. Upon returning, I found Garrett Stiles still at his desk, waiting for me. Without any introduction, I informed him that his personal assistant and my wife were involved in an affair. They had been meeting at his private clubhouse, specifically one of the guest cottages, and Calvin Ridge had just verified all of this to me in the conference room. I confessed openly that I had suspected him, and I offered my apologies for the accusations. Garrett listened attentively, furrowed his brow, and let out a deep sigh. "I can see why you thought it might be me," he said, wealthy older man, exclusive club young employee. "From an outsider's perspective, it does seem that way." He shook his head. "However, there is one fact that remains unchanged. I am too old for romantic affairs, and I am not senile enough to allow my own employees to mock me in private." He immediately dialed the phone and instructed his assistant Calvin and your wife Darlene to come to his office as soon as possible. I had gathered all the necessary information and didn't want to hinder him. I wanted to talk to my wife privately at home. Garrett and I bid farewell, and I left the building and drove home with an emptied feeling, but I was unaware of what awaited me there. Darlene returned home in the evening. When her car screeched to a halt in the driveway, I was prepared for a challenging discussion. The front door opened. In the living room, Darlene announced she was pregnant and that it was Calvin's child. A hush fell over the room. I remained seated, staring at her. All the arguments and resolutions I had prepared seemed insignificant. The news left me yearning for Darlene to joke about it, but she was serious. I rose from the couch, grabbed my jacket from the hook, picked up my truck keys, and told Darlene to stay put. My lawyer would send her the divorce papers. All I desired at that moment was to distance myself from that house. I stepped outside, climbed into my truck, and started the engine, unsure of what to do next. How would you react if you were in his place? Share your thoughts below. I'm eager to hear your views. Consider subscribing for more tales to unfold.